Hey guys, it's Lauren Yates from Rave here, and today we're going to be having a chat over Skype with speaker, author, and podcast host James Whittaker. James, welcome to Rave It Up. It is a pleasure to have you on the show today. How are you going?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. Talking on either sides of the world right now.
That's right. I'm in sunny Los Angeles, California. It's summer here, and birds are chirping. The sky is blue, and things have calmed down a little bit rather than what happened earlier in the year. So it's nice at the moment.
Unlike us, where it's freezing cold here and it's been rainy this week, so complete opposite.
I've seen all my Australian friends wearing beanies and cold snaps and things happening. So yeah, it looks like a cold time for Australia.
You're in a good place right now. For those who don't know, I came across you and we connected a couple of months ago now, isn't it? Like, time has flown, at the We Are Podcast House Sessions Summit. By the way, you guys did a fantastic job. I was blown away. Like, I've never been to something that huge as a virtual event before, so incredible. Very, very impressed. You, Ronsley, and the team should be so proud.
Yeah, one of those things that when the pandemic started, when we were trying to figure out a way that we could help aspiring podcasters and existing podcasters, and putting that event together in about 7 weeks, and ended up having more than 40 speakers and people from 15 or more than 15 countries attending. It was, even the tech went really well, which was a dead set miracle. So yes, we've set the bar maybe a little bit too high for our first event, but if all our events run as smoothly as that, then that's good.
Yeah, it was great too, because you could do it from the comfort of your own home too.
That's right. You can have some pajama pants and anything you want.
Exactly. No one would know. And before we really dive into this interview and chat about all areas of your career, I'm very excited for it, I first have to chat about We Are Podcast, because you are the CEO and co-founder of it, and you've really created, something incredible for, us podcasters and even people wanting to get into the podcast world. So how did this all come about for you, and where did the idea come about, and how much hard work was involved?
It's a good question. Well, in 2015, my business partner, Ronsley Vars, he's the one that started the We Are Podcast movement. So it began in 2015 as the first podcasting conference in the Southern Hemisphere. So it had a whole heap of amazing guests like Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas and Jordan Harbinger, a lot of the real OGs and leaders in the podcasting space. And then we were planning at doing something. It wasn't held in 2019. And then Ronsley's been a really good friend of mine for the last few years, and we talk often. And then earlier in 2020, he basically came to me and said, can you come and speak at We Are Podcast 2020 in Brisbane in Australia, where I'm from? And then I said, yes, I'll fly out from LA for that event. And then the world went, the pandemic hit and things started to get a bit crazy. Flights were cancelled and there was just so much uncertainty. It's weird now because there still is so much uncertainty. But back then there was a lot of uncertainty. So we made the decision to basically cancel that event or essentially take it virtually. So Ronsley and I had a conversation to say, look, there are a lot of people right now who need help, whether they're entrepreneurs who are just realizing that they need to pivot and they need to pivot fast, or there are professionals out there who are at risk of losing their job. There are a lot of mental health issues as a result of those things. So we thought, what are we going to do at a time when people either do two things? They either basically hide and want to watch TV and the news and drink alcohol and basically anything to let go of what's happening at the moment. And there are those that lead in this situation. There are those that are proactive about finding a solution. That's what we did when we created We Are Podcast House Sessions. So we basically just got on the phone to our friends who are, we're very lucky. They're some of the most accomplished podcasters and entrepreneurs and marketers on the planet. And, all the people that we had at House Sessions. And we also spoke to some of the leading brands around the world, people like Success Magazine and Libsyn and Squadcast and Video for Podcasters. And we spoke to those brands and basically said, we need your help. Can you share this event with your network? And it ended up being an amazing event. The feedback has been fantastic. And now we've just launched We Are Members, which is an opportunity to help people who have an existing podcast to really build a thriving business and really make money from their podcast at a time when people need it most.
You guys should be so proud, and I didn't know it was like so new as well, because it's blown up and it's like it's been around for ages.
Yeah, it's yes, it's part of the podcasting fabric now. But even at a time when podcasts, where people who have maybe thought about dipping their toe in the podcast space, they think, wow, there's more than 1 million podcasts now. But if you look at the number of blogs that are out there and the number of YouTube videos and channels that are out there, podcasting, while it has grown considerably and continues to grow massively, it is still well and truly, like the growth stats are still there. Now is the time to do it. It's not the time to launch a blog, but it's absolutely time to launch a podcast, especially at a time when most of these podcasts have got 7 or less episodes. The statistics on that are crazy. I think it's 90% of shows have less than 7 episodes, which is crazy, which is why when I launched my show and all the people that we work with, we really focus on consistency and making sure you are in tune with your message and the higher mission and the audience that you want to serve. And as a result of serving that audience, that's what can lead to that consistency and being more aware of the pain points that your audience faces, that you can start to create solutions to alleviate those problems that your audience faces. And that's how you can start to build a business with it over time.
It's definitely true. Everybody should be getting into podcasting now. Now is not, as you said, the time to get into blogging. Like, that feels like so like 10 years ago.
Yes, people just, and I have a bit of a writing background. I've got books 3 and 4 coming out later this year. It kills me that people don't like long form writing these days. I enjoy reading it, but most people don't. We're in an audible world. People like listening to it. We're in a podcast world. People like listening to it. And we're also in that YouTube world. People like seeing it. So if you have a podcast and you have video content that you can use, that's your entire social media strategy can be done based on the video content that you have with your podcast if you do it right. So yes, it's absolutely the time is right now to start a podcast, and the time is not right to start a blog.
Especially when everyone's on their phones now too. Like, I know what you mean. Like, even when people read books now, it's on their phone. Unfortunately, the times have changed.
Yeah, I was never an audiobook guy until about 6 months ago, when I realized I needed to get through things very, very fast, and I could do that if I'm going out for a walk. I can do that while I'm out doing other things. So, and when you can increase the playback speed to 1.1, which sounds crazy the first time you do it, and then a couple of weeks later you're at 1.4 times playback speed. And I found out that I was actually finishing a lot of books when previously I was guilty of maybe getting to about 80% completion on a book, and then I found it very difficult to finish that last 20%. So with Audible, I'm finishing books at a 100% rate, and if my wife and I are driving in the car, we can listen to a book together. So it's more social than just reading a book yourself too.
Yeah, I definitely do it in the car too. If you're driving heaps, why not use that time? You don't really have time to just actually have your head in a book, unfortunately. Us busy people. Now, going back to the beginning of your career to get a good idea of how you've made it to where you are today, I did read when I was doing my research on you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have a Bachelor of Arts majoring in English and Writing, a Bachelor of Business Management majoring in Marketing and Real Estate, and an Advanced Diploma of Financial Services. That is a lot of study. Why do you have so many? Do you just always love learning something new?
Yeah, random, isn't it? It's bizarre. So I had a lot of issues in high school from an anxiety perspective, which I've spoken about and was featured in Success Magazine about a year ago, actually. So it was the arts degree, which not a lot of people know this. The arts degree was the best degree, or was the only degree that I could get into at the university that I wanted to go to, because all my friends were going there. That was the University of Queensland. So I enrolled in a Bachelor of Arts because I was really interested in writing, and English was a subject that I was always pretty good at. And I remember the very first lecture that I attended for the writing degree, the lecturer, Veni Armano, basically said, put your hand up if you want to make money from writing. And everyone's hands went up. And then he said, let me be very, very clear. You're not going to make money from writing. And it was at that point where I was like, oh my God, this is like, I don't want to be homeless. I want to, at least a decent level of success in whatever field that I want to be in. So a year after that, I started doing the business degree at the same time. And it was in that where you've got to pick your majors. And I thought, well, what am I interested in? So I thought maybe I'll go into property, or maybe I'll go into marketing. So I tried both of those things. And then I ended up going into financial planning. So I needed to get get my, more qualifications for that. So I ended up with the diploma and then the advanced diploma of financial services, majoring in financial planning. And then late in my career, when I was 28, I moved to Boston in the US, which is where I still am today in the US, although in LA, where it's a bit warmer than Boston. That was where I did my MBA. It was 9 months in Boston and 3 months in Shanghai in China as part of an international program. But the degrees that I have, I talk about this often, that it doesn't matter what you know, it matters what you do with what you know. That's why you don't see a single diploma or degree or anything behind me. I've done education to a high level, but it's what you do with what you know rather than what you know. It's really, really important. And that's why I will never have I'm not ashamed of them in any way. I think education is really, really important. I just wish we placed more of an emphasis on problem solving and developing a passion for lifelong learning rather than memorizing facts and things like that. Or the degree is an end of itself, which it's really not. So yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people view it like that, but hopefully you're expanding people's minds today. So did you just stay in America then after you graduated, or did you come back home and then go back to LA, or how did that move happen?
Yeah, I was a little bit lost actually. So I ended up meeting who's now my wife at a wedding in Hawaii where we were both in the bridal party.
Meant to happen.
Yeah, that's right. It was meant to be. It makes for a great story to tell at social gatherings when we could have social gatherings. And so her and I got together, and that was about 8 years ago now, almost to the day, about 8 years ago. So yeah, after that, she was based in LA, and she had just moved back home to LA from Washington DC, and I'd moved to LA from Boston. And I thought, well, I originally moved to America because Australia is a very small place, and I wanted to test myself in the biggest pond in the world from a business perspective, an entrepreneurial perspective. And I thought, wow, imagine doing that in a city like LA, a massive, massive, massive city. I vividly recall being here for the first time at a rooftop bar in Venice in LA and looking out where there were police helicopters, and there had been like a plane crash at the Santa Monica airport, and police sirens and people and everyone around that Venice boardwalk area. And I was just a little bit overwhelmed at how big and hectic the city was. But now I really can't imagine living anywhere else. It's got everything that I need here. It's close by the ocean. There's a lot of really inspiring people who I look up to and who I'm connected with here. And that's why I'm still here today. It's really good opportunities for everything that I do for my career. My wife's got a great job, and now we've got our beautiful little daughter who's 14 months old, who is officially an American. So she'll eventually have an American accent, which is a little unusual, but yes, I still, when Virgin Australia and Qantas have flights on, I will get back to Australia as soon as I can. I've been going back 3 or 4 times a year, for about the last 7 years now.
Because I'm guessing your family is still here.
They are, yeah. My brother's got 6 kids in Brisbane, and my sister's got 4 kids. So I have 10 nephews and nieces to catch up with, who I love seeing when I get back, and obviously mum and dad and other friends too.
Well, they're going to be very grown up by the time you see them again.
Yes, who knows when that will be at this rate. Yeah, we have no idea. And if there will be any airlines still in business to be able to fly me, I might have to charter a boat or something like that.
Take a while. And I'm guessing there are a lot more opportunities for you business-wise over in America, right? Yeah,
it reached a point where I was ready to come home, and my wife Jan, we were thinking about, look, do we go to Australia and basically set ourselves up in Australia as the next chapter of our lives? And that is when the opportunity for the movie came, and then before you know it, I'm writing a modern companion to Think and Grow Rich, the best-selling self-help book of all time. And then speaking on stages with people like Sharon Lechter, who wrote all the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books, with Robert Kiyosaki, and just so many other amazing people now who I have connected with and spoken on stage alongside. And it's a really inspiring place here, and it is home at the moment. We bought a house here about 9 months ago, so we will be in America for the foreseeable future. But the opportunity here as a speaker when there's not a pandemic on, it's really great. I do work with 2 book publishers over here. They're both based one's in Pennsylvania, one's in New York City. The Napoleon Hill Foundation's based here. I do a lot of work with them, and I've got my next book with them coming out I've got a copy of it right here. This is coming out in September. It was supposed to come out in May. So there's a lot of opportunities and things in America, and I think we'll eventually settle back in Australia, but for the time being, this is the place to be.
And sooner or later, you're probably going to have an American accent.
Everyone's like, yeah, where's your American accent? Yes, I hope not. I have a lot of Australian friends over here who I still hang out with. So I have no idea how it hasn't happened more, but I mean, to have been here now for 8 years and still have what I believe is still a very strong Australian accent, because a lot of them still can't understand me. And in LA, yes, it's good and something I look forward to retaining as much as possible.
Yeah. Stay an Aussie. You did have a successful 10-year career in financial planning before going on to your own entrepreneurial journey. What made you want to go on to the entrepreneurial path, and was it hard to leave that financial planning past? Were there any regrets in the beginning?
It's a good question. So in financial planning, it was very much at the point where I was enjoying it, but the challenge really was time. I wasn't growing, and that's when I realized that I had this inkling that I needed to get out and go and do something else. And it had always been my dream to go and do an MBA in America. A lot of people, they want to go and study in the UK, but that just, I prefer the America and everything over here. So that is when I decided to go and do that. But I remember when I left high school, and there was never any emphasis at all on the entrepreneurial route. Like, it was never even discussed, to the best of my knowledge. You were going to be an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, a financial planner, a real estate agent. These are all just traditional career paths. And the way that you do that, you do the best you can in high school, you do the best you can in university, and then you go and get the best job you can. And then you stay in that job and that career for wherever it takes you. And after being in financial planning for so long, I just had this inkling that there was something more. I wasn't inspired. And then when I moved to Boston, I started hanging around and attending events with these really entrepreneurial people. And before I left, within about a year of me leaving Brisbane, I was going to start this consulting company. I still remember it. It was called CLR Consulting, standing for Commitment, Leadership, Results. And I had this plan ready to go. And I was so excited because I would get home from work at about 6 p.m. and I would spend about 5 or 6 hours working on that business. And something that I vividly recall then was the extra energy that you have when you're working on your own business. But it reached a point where I had enrolled in the program not long after, because it's like a 9-month lead time before you go and start that program. And then when I was in Boston meeting all these entrepreneurs, and I just gravitated towards those conversations. I loved their energy. Then I ended up being the president of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Club at my university, which meant that I was able to host entrepreneurial events and MC these events and meet, amazing people, a whole host of incredible world-class entrepreneurs. And I mean, the business ventures that I've wanted to start, I mean, they are. It's funny that you mentioned sort of my varied educational background. That is only superseded by my varied entrepreneurial background now, which has been in like that consulting company I almost started, then the app development company I almost started. I've still got ideas for about 50 different apps, like very comprehensive business plans for each of them on my computer. And then a social media brand and a clothing company and a CrossFit gym and a weightlifting club, and then launching books and films and podcasts and events and all these different things. The entrepreneurial journey is absolutely the journey that I need to be on. It's very, very challenging and very, very difficult, but it just seems more naturally suited to my DNA. I just love it a lot more. And that is a lot of the work that I do now, is to basically help people understand that you need to find out what your passion and your mission and your purpose is. And maybe that's not that traditional linear route that I mentioned before. Maybe it is that entrepreneurial route. And particularly when you follow that entrepreneurial route, it always reminds me of that Steve Jobs quote: you can never connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking back. Why were you involved in a certain business venture or a certain job, or why did you meet a certain person? It's only when you can connect the dots looking back that you realize, that you actually might just be in the perfect place right now. Even though it's not the level of success you want, it's the perfect place and the perfect foundation for you to go after what you want.
Yeah. And it's great that, around this day and age, a lot of people are entrepreneurs, and it's a lot more, acceptable because, instead of that linear path, as you mentioned. What do you think, especially for you, the hardest part about going down that entrepreneurial path, especially in the beginning? Because, it's an up and down ride the whole time, isn't it?
Oh, it is. The hardest part, I think it's having an amazing vision in your head and then realizing that literally every single product or company that I have launched, there's dozens of them at this point, it is always 50 to 100 times harder than I believe it is. And it's frustrating because it starts with an idea and you believe in that idea. But then when it comes down to preparing and basically figuring out, cool, how are we going to bring that idea to market? And that's still exciting because you're learning about it and you're really, really excited to build this business and get some market share and have these amazing things happening. It is always 50 to 100 times harder than you think it's going to be. That can be very, very frustrating. You don't have the money coming in that you thought. And even if you have the money coming in, perhaps you've got very, very high costs. I had a company that had, I think it was about $160,000 come in I think it was the first 14 or 15 months. We had very, very high costs. And there's so many different challenges with that. You think you're going to get support from all your friends, and often you don't really get much support at all from your friends. It really is a way of understanding who your true friends are. It's a very it's like you're alone at the top of a freezing cold mountain naked. That's what it feels like in the entrepreneurial world. It's why I really admire people like Elon Musk. There's a video where he was on 60 Minutes talking about the famous astronauts who he looked up to, who he was building companies like SpaceX and Tesla for. They inspired him and they still inspire him. But then when he heard the criticism of him and what they were trying to do, and it brought tears to his eyes because he felt so lonely, like that naked person at the top of the mountain. And it's a very, very, very difficult route, and it ties directly into mental health and is the reason why, I really want to try and help as many people as I can with their mental health and to figure out what path they want in life and to give them all the tools and resources they need to succeed in that path. And a huge part of that is relationships. I just interviewed Keith Ferrazzi on my podcast, He's been a real bucket list. That was a real bucket list tick for me, even though he doesn't have a massive public profile. He wrote a book called Never Eat Alone, which I read in 2012, which completely changed my life. It's all about relationships, and he's known as a modern-day Dale Carnegie. And the idea being that if you are boldly of service to others and you're always giving before you get, and you give without the expectation of anything in return, relationships will give you everything you need in life. So important at every stage in your life. And relationships have given me every single opportunity that I enjoy today, and I believe will give me every opportunity that I have in the future.
Oh yeah, it's definitely about who you know, isn't it?
Definitely. It really is, yeah. And there's a real skill around making sure, like, how do you keep in touch with people once you've met them? So a lot of people are like, cool, how do I meet people who are much higher up the pecking order? And that's not crazy hard to do. It can be hard to do, but it's not crazy hard. If you're even remotely resourceful and you establish a foundation, it's not that hard to do. But how can you keep in touch with these people rather than just saying, how can I be of service? You need to figure out how you can actually be of service to those people. Tomorrow I'll be on David Meltzer's Instagram account doing an IG live with him. He's got, I think like 300,000 followers on Instagram. I interviewed Dave for my book. And so I've helped him out. He's helped me out. He's someone who's never said no to me. I've never said no to him. We just help each other out. He's just such a fantastic guy. He talks the talk, but he walks the walk more than most people I know. And, as each of you grow in your respective careers, you're just able to help each other out more and more. It's coming from abundance rather than that scarcity mindset. It's coming from win-win rather than that for me to win, the other person has to lose. And a lot of people forget that. I'm very, very competitive, but I'm mainly competitive with myself. You can formulate win-wins. It's not always the dark and light, the evil and the good. There are ways that you can formulate win-wins for people. And if you can do that in relationships, that is one of the most fundamental, if not the most fundamental recipe for success.
Oh, that couldn't have been said better. Thank you. What a fantastic guest to have on this show. I can definitely see why Brandon T. Adams is calling you the modern day Napoleon Hill. I think that's a huge compliment for you, right?
He called me 60 seconds before this interview, actually, and I told him I had to go because I'm talking to you. Yeah.
Well, call him later. Tell him I say hi.
I will. I will.
And speaking of Napoleon Hill, and you did bring up the Think and Grow Rich, the legacy book that you did write. I'm speechless when I was doing my research on you and I read that. I was like, okay, wow. And now there's been a film made of it. I'm like, what doesn't this guy do? Like, Your foreword was written by Bob Proctor. How did you manage to have that happen? That's huge.
Good question. So I interviewed Bob for the project. So that was how I already had the relationship with him. And I just kept in touch with him and his team. And when the time came, like, you still get a little bit, it's if you're getting someone at a profile that Bob has, and Bob, I think, is 86 now. He lives in Canada. He's not like I can randomly bump into him for a coffee, So I had to, I was very, very clear on what I wanted. And that's what a lot of people fall short on. They say, look, I want the other person to help, but you're not clear on what you want. So I was very, very clear. I wanted Bob to write the foreword for my book. So that was what I wanted. So why would Bob want to write the foreword for the book? Well, he's in the book. His business partner is in the book, and he loved his story, and his business partner, Sandy, loved her story. That's one really good reason, because that essentially promotes them and their business. Think and Grow Rich was also the book that completely changed Bob's life, and he reads it every single day. He carries a copy with it everywhere. So to be able to say to him, look, Bob, I know how much this book has transformed your life. Basically, this is a modern version and you're featured in it. I can't think of anyone better to write the foreword for the book. If you would be willing to do it, it would mean the world to me. And that was basically the process that happened, and following up to make sure it was done. And I can't remember how many times I had to follow up. It wasn't a crazy amount of times, but if it's something that you really want, until you get a hard no, the answer is not no. And sometimes you just need to follow up and follow up and follow up. And sometimes no is actually just, a temporary no, and you can figure out a way around that. So having Bob write the foreword for the book is something that I'll be eternally grateful for. I really appreciate that.
And this was your second book too, so I'm guessing it's probably a little bit easier. Like, I just released my own book in February, so I definitely know how long the process takes and how challenging it can be.
This one was the first one, The Beginner's Guide to Wealth, is actually a 10th anniversary edition coming out in the next month or two. But this one, Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy, it was a bit, there was a lot more at stake. This was a book written for an American audience. This was where, it's a modern version of the best-selling self-help book of all time. So it was step one, don't overthink it. The moment you overthink it, you're toast, and the whole project is toast. So it was really important that I didn't overthink it, and just breaking it up into as small a tasks as I could, and then just executing as good as I could on each of those tasks, trusting the process, trusting in my own ability, and having the right team around me. I had more than 1 million words of research notes for that. Like, it's clear that you've done your research for this podcast. Not a lot of people do that. That is why I will always remember you. Like, I remember you from our event based on your energy and the questions that you asked and everything else. And I remember the research. And it was when I interviewed Keith Ferrazzi. He said to me, I need to stop and acknowledge that you are the most prepared interviewer that I've ever had, because it's important to do that. It's a really important part of relationships. So I tried to do that with all these people that I interviewed, because I knew that by being prepared, it showed my respect for them. And by showing that respect for them means it would be much easier for me to be memorable and keep in touch with those people. And I've been able to keep in touch with many of those people who are, very high level people for the most part. Some of them are now among my closest friends. I met Brandon Adams through that project. I met Janine Shepherd through that project. I talk to these two every week. David Meltzer I met through that project. Bob Proctor. There are all these people who are amazing people by being prepared and doing the right thing. And so that was a huge focus of that book, Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy, was being prepared.
Especially with being like such a legendary book that everybody knows, so I can see why you definitely not want to overthink it.
Yeah, that's right. But there was an element of thinking about, that was released in 1937, which means it was written before 1937. That's a long time ago. What does today's audience want to hear? Why do 99% of people read Think and Grow Rich and do nothing with it? So one of my primary objectives with Think and Grow Rich, The Legacy, was to make sure that anyone who read it, if that was to be their real starting point of success, that they had to understand it. They could not feel stupid reading, or feel like they were stupid reading a book that was their starting point to success. That was a really, really important focus. And I think a lot of people get caught up in paradigms and consciousness. They want to throw out these fancy words to make themselves sound smart, but you need to figure out a way that you can get into the mind of that reader and your audience. It goes back to your podcast or whatever bit of content that you're doing. If your real objective is to enact change in that other person, you need to figure out the best avenue and the best way and the best method of speaking to those people in a way that creates and is a catalyst for that change. Otherwise, you're doing it for yourself and not for the other people.
Exactly. It is for the reader, and you want them to understand so that they love the book and reread it and give it to their friends. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, definitely.
And how was your experience working on the film? Because you were the co-executive producer, and I even see the chair in the background there.
Yes.
Was that yours?
Yes, I have the director chair. Yeah, it was great. I'd never been involved in a film before, so it was pretty random being a kid from Brisbane all of a sudden being in LA on film sets and meeting people and cameras and doing all these different things. But
very different from what you're used to doing.
That's right. But a lot of people in that situation would think, wow, I have no right to an opinion in that scenario. But I had been involved in a hell of a lot of other things, so I knew when they were making mistakes. And that was when I had an opportunity to be able to say, cool, look, this is actually what we need to do. And as I was able to sort of prove myself with those different things, that was where they were basically, it reached a point where my inbox got very, very full with requests from everything. I mean, like, how's the audio in this clip? And should we get this person involved? And what about the narrator and the ending credits and all these different things, and quite overwhelming, but all really good stuff, and was just a great project to be involved in.
So the film came after the book, didn't it? So you'd already written the book and it was released.
They were released about the same time, yeah.
Wow, what a huge project for you. Like, your mind must have just been on Think and Grow Rich for a good amount of time.
It was, yes, it was. It was all consuming for a few years for that project, because even writing the book and producing the film, I mean, that's... Anyone who's written a book or produced a film knows that is just the start. Like, I mean, the real work begins once you've got a finished product and you say, cool, how are we going to get this into the hands of as many people as we can? That's where 80% of the work needs to be done. And a lot of people, I guess, a bit like a university degree, like we spoke about earlier, the degree is not the end. The finished product of the book or the film, it's not the end. It's what you do with it to be able to get into the hands of as many people as possible. And that doesn't end. I'm still on that journey, because I feel like Think and Grow Rich was the book that changed my dad's life. I'm extremely close to the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. I know this material helps people, and I will continue to talk about these lessons until the day that I die, because I believe in it so much.
Definitely. And I think mainstream media, social media, it's obviously really, really helping you. And I actually noticed, when I was researching you, that you have over 17.5 thousand followers on Instagram. Does that ever get daunting for you? Do you like post a photo and go, oh wow, this is about to go out to a lot of people?
No, it doesn't. It's funny because there are times when you think to yourself, you always lament a lack of progress in your journey. And what I've learned is that everyone does that. Every single person on the planet, for the most part, lament a lack of progress on their journey at some stage or another. No, I don't overthink that. I just basically try and, to me, it's I am here to change as many lives as I possibly can, and Instagram is just one way for me to do that. So no, I don't overthink it. You have these usual things around, well, what engaging content can I release that's actually going to help people? So I take the content side very seriously to make sure it's something great. And actually, over the last few months, I've had a bit of a break on social media, just with how crazy the world has been. I think it's just been important for everyone to double down on self-care, like Hal Elrod said at House Session. So I've been trying to do that while behind the scenes I've been busy working on a lot of things and trying to figure out what can I do to my daily routine to make sure I'm in the optimal mindset to succeed in my mission of helping a lot of other people in achieve their missions.
Yeah, and spending a lot more time with your family now, which is great. As you said, your daughter's 18 months, so definitely pivotal times as she's growing. How do you balance your career with family? Do you have any like tips on time management that you can share with our listeners, especially if they're working parents themselves?
It's a good question. So the most important thing is not my relationship with my daughter. The most important relationship that I have is my relationship with her mum, my wife. Because as long as that relationship is good and that's secure and that's loving and that's kind and that's growing, then our daughter will see that, and that will be the way that she learns the values of love and care and kindness and generosity and compassion through those things. So that's the most important thing in my life, is my relationship with my wife Jen. Very closely behind that is my relationship with Sophie, and I love her to death. Every morning I love to be the person that she sees first of all in the morning. But before that, so we recently changed our morning routine. So we wake up and we do previously. It's funny that your life sort of goes out the window when you have a kid. You've got this routine, but then all of a sudden you've got a baby. You don't know how much sleep you're going to have. So all of a sudden, like, you don't know when you're going to wake up. Someone who's basically prides themselves on being a master of productivity, that can go out the window pretty quick in those first 6 months of child number one. But it reached a point in the last few months where we wanted to take the power back a bit. So before that, we were... once we put her to bed, we were like, cool, let's relax. Maybe let's watch a TV show and just completely switch off and relax. And now we realized we can change that relaxation time at night to being productive time in the morning. So now we wake up earlier than we used to. We do a 15 or 20 minute yoga session, and then we'll go and do a 15-minute meditation, and then we will go and do a cold shower after that. And that cold shower gives you just sustained energy throughout the day and really wakes you up. I always talk about winning the day, and having the cold shower, I always say to myself, if I really am serious about winning this day, I'm going to get my ass into this cold shower right now. And that's the mindset that I have. So before our daughter's even woken up, we've done our exercise, we've done our mental exercise, we've done the cold shower so we feel invigorated. That's really, really important as part of that daily routine. And then making sure that my wife understands where I want to go individually, and I understand where she wants to go individually, and that we support each other on the journey. That's really, really important. She knows that my personality is I've got a lot going on at all times. She knows that checking my phone, I could get an email that can literally change my mood from amazing and present to horrible. And I realize that that's not a great shift to be able to have in your life. So I deleted the mailbox app on my iPhone actually about 2 months ago, and I don't think I'll ever actually put it back, because I'm really enjoying not having that. But there are a few things that we do about balancing that with family. But to give you an idea of how hard I sort of push this line, our daughter was born on Wednesday, and on Friday at about 1 p.m. we drove home, and at 3:30 p.m. on that day, on the Friday, I was on stage at the Anaheim Convention Center doing a speech in front of 500 people. That was a really important speech for me. It was really important I did that. My wife knew that. Obviously, if there was anything even remotely wrong, I never would have done that, but everything was okay. So I was able to go and do that as tired as I was. I think I had about 5 hours sleep for that whole week. That's really important for me. That's really important for us. And being able to do those things where, it's at times that 99.9% of other people wouldn't have done that. But that also means if I want to have a week of just time with my daughter, or if I want to go and have 32 days in Europe on a honeymoon with my wife, that we will do that. If we want to go and spend 2 weeks in Hawaii, we'll do that without being glued to our phones. So we have great holidays and things like that, but it means that I also push it very, very hard on the work front. But daily routine and respect for each other's journeys are really important in that.
And it's a good balance between your work life and your family life. I love that. Yeah. And even though you've already achieved so much in your career and just life in general, James, what else can we expect from you in the future? You said you have that book coming out in September, but what else?
Yeah, we've got Andrew Carnegie's Mental Dynamite coming out in September, so that's a big one. We've got that one will be, I suspect, a really, really big one, so I'm very, very excited for that. I've got one day at the start of September with 25 interviews locked in back to back in the one day, so that will be an interesting...
Good luck. I know how hard that could be.
Yeah, I'll need to make sure our Nespresso machine's working for that one. But we've got the Beginner's Guide to Wealth, the 10th anniversary edition coming out very soon. That will be an audio book as well as the hardcover, so very excited for that. I've got another book coming out next year, but I can't talk about that one as yet. We've got We Are Members, which I'm so excited for. We're literally launching that in August. So anyone who's got a podcast and wants to, make money from their podcast, that's what we're really doing. We're helping you build a business and establish literally life-changing relationships that can completely transform your trajectory based on where you're at. And then other events and things that we're doing with We Are Podcast, as well as my own podcast. So we've got a lot going on, but it's what I'm trying to do now is build a life and a business empire. I don't like to use that word, but I mean, it incorporates a lot of different ventures. I'm trying to do that in a way that doesn't burn me out, because I've been involved in almost all of my other business ventures where it's easy to burn out on those things. So I'm trying to do this in a way where energy can be sustained and I can have that business and life balance and family balance that you mentioned earlier. So they're all the different things going on.
Jeez, you should be so proud. I don't know how you do it. And when the other book comes out, you'll just have to come back on the show and chat about it. I'd love to hear all about it.
Anytime, Lauren, anytime.
And everybody, that podcast is called Win the Day. Incredible. Just by saying that, I feel just so motivated. What a great name. Good job. And we are unfortunately getting to the end of the interview, James. Really appreciate your time and had so much fun. But as a closing statement, and was probably the most important question, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 14-year-old self?
Oh, 14-year-old self. It's a good question. I think it's got to come back to being yourself. Just be who you are, not someone else. And there is so much in that. I mean, trying to basically develop a passion for lifelong learning and an ability to solve problems at a very, very young age. I think that's really, really important. And there's a slide that I put up. It's the first slide that I put up at literally every single presentation that I do that says each day, if you do not make the decision to win, you've automatically made the decision to lose. I wish I understood that at a younger age. I don't have any regrets. I'm happy with where things are at. Very, very happy. I couldn't be happier with where things are at in the life that I have today. But I wish I understood that sentiment much earlier in life, and I wish more people in the world understood that if we don't have that intent of saying, what does it look like to win today, and focusing on our mental health and our business, and our family, what does winning the day look like in all those areas? Because if we don't focus on those things, it's much easier for us to fall victim to, a whole heap of different things that are going to knock our entire lives and families and everything else off course.
Which is easy enough to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, especially during a pandemic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Before we go, if the listeners would like to contact you or find out what you're up to in the future, where should they go? Yeah,
you can go to Instagram, James Witt with 2 T's. Facebook. On all the channels, and the podcast. If they want to go and listen to more about me, if they're not sick of my voice, they can go and listen to Win the Day with James Whittaker. And if I can be of service to anyone, just let me know.
Well, you've got a great voice for podcasting, and you're such a fantastic presenter. That was something that really stood out at the We Are podcast, our sessions, because I was like, geez, I just could not stop looking at your presenting style and just taking all my tips, and so thank you.
You're too kind. I appreciate it.
And also website jameswitt.com if people want to go visit that as well. Yeah,
jameswitt.com. There's a free bonus chapter from Think and Grow Rich to Legacy, which you can go and check out. Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know that you're such a busy man, so the very fact that you took the time to chat today and for a while, I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, Lauren. Always great to see you.
You're welcome. And as I said before, you can come on anytime. You've got my contacts, so just let me know.
I look forward to it.
And when all the restrictions are lifted, hopefully we can have a chat in person when you come back to Australia.
Yes, that I very much look forward to. Who knows when that's going to be, but yes, I can't wait to get home at some stage.
Yes, well, when you do, let me know, and we'll organise something.
Perfect, sounds good.
I know I'm in Sydney, but we'll figure it out.
We'll make it happen. I'm overdue for a trip to Sydney anyway.
Exactly. Come visit. Well, I hope you all enjoyed today's interview. If you'd like to check out any of our other interviews, visit our website, raveituptv.com. All the podcasts and videos are there for you to enjoy. But for now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!